afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about how you can make your apps more usable with less effort. So, hi, I'm Ben, and I'm going to be talking about how you can do that as you build your app. Little bit about me to start off with. I'm an organizer of Community Kit, as Ellen mentioned. We help organize an event alongside WWDC, bring the community together. I am also an iOS developer working on an app called Duo Mobile. This is a two-factor authentication app at its core, and we have a pretty decent-sized user base. We have about 4.85 million monthly active users. We also, Wirecutter New York Times said that they really liked us, and we're like, #1 2FA app, yay. Um, but as a result of all of this, we've had a pretty decent chance to get a lot of practice with accessibility because we have a lot of academic and governmental customers, and they have requirements about how accessible the tools they use need to be. So, as a relatively small iOS team, we've learned a lot about accessibility. And that is not what I do the whole time I'm at work, but I care a lot about it, and I'm excited to share what we've learned to do from what we learned not to do. And then, just to clarify, we are the one on the left there. We are not the one with the owl that does languages, even if we get reviews for them sometimes, or a lot. Couple other quick things about me. I love building usable apps. I love building apps that are accessible. I care a lot about that. I don't like doing things the hard way. So I don't like doing things that I could be doing in a way that is faster and takes less effort and trying to achieve the same result by taking a longer path. I want to do things a way that works really well and then be able to do this and rest. So we're going to talk about that. How can you make your app accessible with a little less effort? We're going to start by understanding accessibility. This sort of leans into what Josh and Zach were talking about. This is a bit of a how to conceptualize something a new way angle. Then we're going to talk about a strategy for building accessibly. And then we're actually going to dive into making a quick app more accessible with a little bit less effort, a little less manual intervention. So let's dive in with understanding accessibility. First off, we have a quote from Paul Hudson. Making your app accessible means taking steps to ensure that everyone can use it fully regardless of their individual needs. There are a lot of reasons you may want to do this, such as just generally supporting all of your users. Additionally, becoming disabled in some capacity is one of the only things you're almost guaranteed to deal with at some point in your life. So let's dig into what it means to actually do this. What makes an app accessible? Is it having voiceover support, something that Montana talked about? That's important. That's really important. And if you have good voiceover support, that is going to put you in good stead for things like the EAA, the European Accessibility Act. It's not everything, though. Is it supporting switch control? Is it supporting assistive touch or voice control? These are all important things to support, but they don't make up the entirety of what having an accessible app is. And I'm not going to dive into all of them, but if you don't recognize any of these, I do recommend looking them up. They are largely easier to test than you might expect. And it's a really interesting experience playing around with them and seeing what another way to interact with these interfaces is. One last, is it about having a good color contrast? I think I may have defeated them in the color contrast department. I'm pretty sure this ratio is worse. That would be a better color contrast. Again, important, not everything. I'm making the case that an accessible app isn't just one where you can perform actions. It is also one where you can discover which actions you can perform. So there's a difference between what something allows you to do, what you actually can do with it, and what you understand that you can do. This applies to more than just assistive technologies. So let's look at an example of this with a showcase of some of my stunning web design skills here at an iOS conference. Here is the Apple Store. So I I'm going to tell you all as the audience, I promise that you can order apples from this interface. There's a button that lets you order apples. But where is it? It's not You're not likely to find it because there's nothing here that would make it discoverable. There's no color on the text of the button, there's no underline. All the patterns that you've learned to match to understand that something is a link. Now, realistically, I can tell you because I made this that the button is here. But you wouldn't know that. This is accessibility in many ways. Accessibility and usability go hand in hand. And this is something that I'm hoping will help people take away a bit more of an understanding of what it means to be accessible. It's so that you don't leave people with an experience that is similar to being stuck on a website looking for the button that you are trying to click with no idea where it is. It's happened to me, it's probably happened to a lot of you. So, going back to this quote, an accessible app isn't just one where you can perform actions, it's also one where you can discover which actions you can perform. There are actually words for these things. And this ties into something that Maxim mentioned yesterday about Don Norman, the guy with the book with the teapot that if you tried to pour the water, it would burn you. That person also popularized the terms affordance and signifier. They existed beforehand, but popularized. There are the actions an interface can perform, the ability afforded to you, that is an affordance, and anything that helps you discover those is a signifier. So these form much of the basis of usability in general, and they apply to accessibility too. So iOS is often a bit less of a free for all than web development. Apple is a little bit more of a closed ecosystem. They give us controls and components that we can use and put together in fun ways. And by default, out of the box from Apple, those generally meet a certain baseline level of accessibility. Not entirely, but they solve a lot. So, with that in mind, we're going to move to the next item in the agenda. We were talking about generally understanding accessibility. We're now going to move on to a strategy for building accessibly. First off, try to use a built in component. This is just going to be an order of operations, top to bottom, of what you might consider when designing and building an interface. Try to use what Apple gives you. Steal their borrow their hard work, borrow, and they have an accessibility team that has worked very hard and considered a lot of options. If we can use a component that they give us, we get a lot of stuff for free and we get forward compatibility. It's fantastic. Life is happy. But sometimes you really do want something to look a bit more custom. You don't just want it to be the out of the box switch, toggle, etc. So, in that case, before building something entirely custom, try to customize a built in component. Maybe you create a custom button style that you apply to your buttons that lets you still leverage as much as possible of the hard work that Apple has done for you. Don't reinvent that wheel. And then you still get some of the signifiers that users are expecting from elsewhere in the system where they're used to interacting with iOS. But sometimes you do really need something to be custom. So only then would I suggest, okay, build a fully custom component, go all out. Suffering abounds. It may not be a great time. There's a lot to consider, but you absolutely can do it and sometimes absolutely should. I'm not trying to pretend that you never should be creating things from scratch. So, with that sort of flowchart in mind, let's actually look at an example of trying to make a more accessible app. So, we were talking about a strategy. Now we're going to look at an example. And we're going to look at this through the lens of voiceover. So, again, there's lots of other assistive technologies. This is not a comprehensive list. Again, play around with them. All of these ones use the same accessibility tree. So basically, the same generated list of elements that is read out loud by voiceover, that is processed by these other technologies. And that is one of the reasons that if you make sure voiceover works well, you're putting yourself in a good position to probably work well with the others, though you should still make sure. So, with that, we are going to use voiceover in these examples, and we're going to move on to the Apple Store. So, this is, of course, now not the web version of the Apple Store. The goal is super simple to uh, build a relatively realistic example app that we can use to illustrate some of these accessibility concepts without making it feel too contrived. And just because I was afraid that I would actually get in trouble with Apple and they would put me on some sort of list and no app would ever see the light of day again. No, it's not that Apple Store. It's my own weird creation for this presentation. So I'm going to play a video, and we will both see how loud it is, that shows the current experience of using this with VoiceOver. And then I'm going to ask some of you if there's anything you notice. So we're going to play that.
Apples. Image. 1. 16a. Red apple. The Apple Store red apple. Heading. We sell amazing apples. Sparkles. Order now sparkles. Click to order delicious apples. Apple count. 0. Minus. Red apple. Plus. Red apple. Buy now. Button. Words. Speaking rate. 70%. Containers. Headings. Red apple. The app. Heading not found. Heading not found. Heading not found. Heading not found. Heading not found.
All right. So if we could get the house lights up. Melissa, vous pouvez allumer la salle, s'il vous plaît? Merci. All right. Anyone in the crowd, and I know I'm asking a room full of developers for participation. Anyone want to shout out something they saw that would not be ideal from an accessibility standpoint? I've got one down there. It's reading out the emojis. Yes. Any others? Let's see if we can go for one more. Reading the image, I also heard. Yes. Thank you. So, you're spot on. Let's walk through some of the issues there. First of all, we are reading the decorative header image out loud. It is a lovely image, I say because I chose it, but it does not do anything for people who are, say, not looking at the screen, who are maybe using the app via VoiceOver. You don't need that. Oh, pardon, Melissa, c'est bien. Les lumières. Merci. So, reading the decorative header image aloud. Also, the decorative emojis aren't fun in VoiceOver. Apple, the Apple Store, red apple is not it. It's good again visually, but the fact that we have the text in with the decoration makes it something that doesn't provide any new signifiers to the user. Also, those Apple buttons have no signifiers as well. They don't say Apple button. They just say red apple minus red apple plus. Doesn't, if you weren't looking at the screen, nothing there would tell you that those can be interacted with. And finally, there are no headings indicated. That one was the gimme. I genuinely was having a lot of fun making that video. So we're going to start with the headings first, and then we'll work on a messier example. So this block of code is for one of those cards in our interface. We just need to focus on this bit. So you can see how we're basically setting up a pretty simple VStack, a vertical stack with two text elements in it for that heading of visit us and find us in Apple Park. And then we're putting that on a background of a rounded rectangle, right? So how do we make it a heading? There is a simple way that we can mark this as a heading manually. And we can go ahead and do that. And that does work. It does get the job done. And it does mean that VoiceOver will read it out loud and it will say, that this is a header and you will be able to swipe back and forth to it. However, it does lean a little more into the part of the flowchart about customizing an existing element. And I want us to consider if there's something Apple gives us that we can just use. Because again, forward compatibility, you get things that behave more similarly to the rest of the system that has a similar interface. All of this signifier affordance stuff is about pattern matching what you already understand. The save button is a floppy disk, and we don't use those very much anymore. So it's the same thing. If you're expecting headers to be a certain way, you want to see that. And in this case, there is a better option. Instead of all this, we can actually just do this. There is a group box element in Swift UI that basically does exactly what we were trying to do. So we no longer have to specify that background whatsoever. You don't have to manually mark something as a header for the accessibility tree, and you just get to set it up. Internally, it does mark it as a header, and the system reads it out loud the way you want. So you'll notice here, the end result was actually one that doesn't use the accessibility APIs all that much. We're trying to figure out how to let Apple use those for us. So let's see how this works now. And again, sound is going to play. Hopefully, it's the same volume.
Characters. Headings. Sparkles. Ordered sparkles. Visit us sparkles. Heading. Sparkles. Red apple. The Apple Store red apple. Heading.
Yay! We did it. Thank you. So now those are working. Let's move on to the buttons. This one is significantly more involved. Let's remind ourselves how those work right now. Again, warning, more sound.
Minus. Red apple. Plus. Red apple. Buy now. Button. Red apple.
Cool. There we are. There's our reminder. So, what's our issue with the buttons? Well, they don't acknowledge that they're buttons at all. They don't have those signifiers. There's nothing telling us that it's a button. So, we're going to fix those. Here is another giant block of code, and I have probably lost you all immediately. Thank you, Josh and Zach. But we're going to focus on this part. So, here's how our buttons are set up in the code. We have an H stack with what turns out to be two text elements that just have overlays of the text of plus or minus, and then tap gesture recognizers. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense that those wouldn't be saying that they're buttons, right? Because they're not. They're just text elements. Okay, so you might be thinking we could make those buttons then. And you are right. We absolutely can. So, yeah, let's make those buttons. And now they're buttons. Now you've got buttons that contain those text elements, and you don't need the tap gesture recognizer. And that's nice. It does make them read out loud as buttons. But if you recall, basically we had these plus and minus buttons and then a count, and you were incrementing or decrementing. When you press one of these buttons, it still doesn't say anything to you about what the new count is. It doesn't tell you what you've changed it to. And so they're still not all that useful. Basically, it would say, red apple plus button. So we could make it do that by hand, but it would certainly be a bit more work, right? Like we'd be talking accessibility containers, setting the order that elements are read in, a lot of manually intervening in the accessibility tree, telling the system, do this, then do this, then do this, and do this way for these elements. And it would not be much fun. And it is so much not fun that the amount of code it would have taken was not an amount that I was willing to put on a slide. So it'd be really nice if we could use the behavior of the system stepper element. There is a stepper element. It has a plus and a minus button, and you bind it to a variable, and it will, take care of all of the voiceover things, all of the assistive technology things that Apple has set it up to do. It'd be nice if we could just comment all that out and use it. And if we did, it would look something like this. So functional, right? But Now we lose those beautiful apple-shaped buttons that we love so much. They're really the signature of our app. So I talked to the design team, which was also me, and they didn't like that. They said we need the buttons to look like that, and I get it. It's our identity, our brand. So sometimes I do want you to consider, can you just use this element? Can you add that branding, that flavor somewhere else and use what Apple gives you, that first step in the flowchart? But you can't always. And in that case, there is actually a way that we can take advantage of the work that Apple's team has done to make their stepper accessible. So, looking back at what we have, we can actually mark this with a fun modifier. This is our same H stack of buttons. We can add on the accessibility representation modifier. So this one is really, really fun. Basically, what it does is it replaces the accessibility elements associated with what it's applied to in the accessibility tree with whatever you give it. In this case, Apple's stepper element. You keep the visual behavior of your Apple stepper, but you use for all assistive technology intents and purposes, whatever the behavior is of Apple's. And then you don't have to do all of that nightmare work that would have been a total hassle. And you still get to do right by people who are using assistive technology. So let's see how that works.
Apple count 0, 0, adjustable. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yay! We did it. Okay, cool. That is working. That is so much better. When you adjust it, it announces the new value. Now let's check in with our last couple accessibility issues. We're going to just fix the rest. Here's a quick reminder of the state of things.
Apples, image, 4 bullet IS 43. Red apple, the Apple Store red apple, heading. We sell amazing apples. Sparkles, order now sparkles, heading.
Okay, so to recap, the header image, nice visual decoration, does not do much for us in voiceover. It's a bunch of apples. It doesn't act as a signifier to tell us you can do something. It's just pretty. And the apple emojis in those headings, or any other emojis, again, nice decoration, no signifier, no, or rather, isn't a signifier, doesn't tell you about something you can do. So let's take a look at the code here. Let's look at fixing the header image first. So we're looking at this. This is our apples image, and this is actually a great point for manually intervening in the accessibility tree because we know something that the machine doesn't. We know something the machine doesn't. We know that this is something that doesn't provide any signified value to the user if they are using assistive technologies, if they're not looking at it. So then we do just want to intervene in the accessibility tree. We do want to just say, hide it, just hide it entirely. And that solves that. It will just skip over. Next piece is the decorative text with the apple emojis said something like red apple, the Apple Store, red apple. Sorry, red apple, the Apple Store, red apple. So again, we know something the system doesn't because we gave it a label that it has every reason to believe should be read out loud. So let's just tell it, maybe don't. Instead, say the Apple Store. And just adding that accessibility label modifier, in this case, is a way of us telling the system, again, something you don't know is that we kind of put some decorative stuff in that text and maybe shouldn't have, but we did, or maybe it was the only way. So let's see how it all performs one last time.
The Apple Store, heading. Characters, headings. Order now, heading. Visit us, heading. Order now, heading. Click to order delicious apples. Apple count 0, 0, adjustable. 1, 2, 3.
All right. Yay. Cool. So that is significantly improved. We're skipping over elements that are not useful to people who are using assistive technologies. It is significantly less fragile. We are using more of what Apple gives us and building in all the benefits from that I touched on. And we are doing a much better job of signifying to our users how they can, do the use part of user and use the app. So let's talk about what we've learned. Try to use Apple's UI elements from the beginning. I think it should be pretty clear the benefits that gives, though I hope it also feels like I acknowledge that, yeah, there's a limitation to that, which is it will then just look like the native element. If you can't do that, then okay, try to customize an Apple element. Try to get as much benefit as you can from what they've done. And only then dive into trying to build fully custom UI. Sometimes you have to, and when you do, look at what you need to do to make sure that that is accessible because that won't give you a lot of stuff for free. Give yourself the best shot to do things easily. Thank you. Quick appreciations. Everyone running Swift Connection, to anyone who was subjected to a test run of this, to Framus for generating pretty screenshots, and an apology to Josh for having to thank Charlie for something, to anyone who has conversations about accessibility. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any services or tools that can find accessibility issues in my apps? Something like I can run an unit test or like a snapshot test kind of thing that can warn me before I ship it that I am not doing things right.
That is a great question. And I'm going to start by being totally honest and saying that specifically the unit testing side of things, I actually have not played around with. I am going to use that as a sneaky way to mention that there are companies or services that will do accessibility audits of your apps. And I want to impart on you all that those are a valuable tool to consider, but they're also not necessarily your whole strategy. So I would say it is still very much worth it to work from the beginning to proactively build your apps accessibly rather than only reactively waiting until you've built the whole app and then you go through and you say, okay, is this accessible? Oh, rats. And then you have to redo a whole bunch of stuff. Um, I will also say, whoever asked that or anyone else, if you have thoughts on it, I'd love to hear.
Thank you.
Uh, the people want your spiciest take. What is your take on liquid glass regarding accessibility?
Okay. My take is that I know Apple reined it in a significant amount and tweaked it and sort of dialed it in from the early beta period for iOS 26. And I also know that a lot of people who I've spoken to who do potentially use their iPhone with having some amount of visual challenge have said that it is better, but not fantastic. I don't want to make some sort of definitive statement on whether it is or isn't great because I honestly, aside from the glasses, don't have much trouble using my phone visually. That said, I definitely do sometimes have trouble seeing what a button is saying depending on the background. So I would say it goes back to however you build your app, look at color contrast issues between your liquid glass button and what is behind it and try to take that into account. Because regardless of whether we say Apple should have done it this way or Apple should have done it that way, at the end of the day, we're still wanting to build apps, right? And no matter how much blame we throw around, we've still got to find a way to make it usable.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, the last one is: do you have any examples of things that make apps more fun for people with vision impairments, like a parallel of the emojis for non-visually impaired people?
That is a really fun question. And the honest answer is I don't know. Um, I know what I'm gonna Google once I'm backstage now, and if anyone does know, please, like, find me or send me a message, follow me something, and I also know what I'm gonna ask the actual accessibility expert who I work with back at work and see if they have any thoughts.
Sounds like a plan. All right. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
You